My name is Samantha Parker. I'm 28 years old, living in a small apartment in Boulder, Colorado. It's a quiet area, usually safe, and I've never really had a reason to feel uneasy here. That changed after one night at the carnival, a night I wish I could forget. It was a Friday evening, and a traveling carnival had set up just outside town. My friends, Jenny and Rachel, dragged me along. We spent hours riding the Ferris wheel, eating funnel cakes, and playing rigged carnival games. As the night went on, we stumbled across a clown performer standing near the entrance. His face was painted in bright colors, and his oversized grin stretched from ear to ear. I immediately felt uncomfortable. There was something off about his eyes. They were too wide, too alert, like he was watching us too closely. Jenny, ever the extrovert, insisted we take a picture with him. I hesitated, but I didn't want to be the killjoy. We stood beside him, and as I smiled for the camera, I noticed the clown's hand resting just a little too close to my shoulder. His grip felt cold, almost mechanical, like he wasn't just a regular performer, but someone hiding behind the makeup. His smile was too forced, too unnatural. I shrugged it off. It was just a picture, right? We left soon after, laughing and talking about the night, completely unaware of what was about to happen. When I got home, I settled into my bed, exhausted from the long day. I had just started drifting off when my phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. Curious, I opened it, and my stomach dropped. It was a picture of me at the carnival, standing next to the clown. But in this version of the photo, the clown was standing directly behind me. His face looming over my shoulder, his smile stretched even wider. My heart started racing. I hadn't seen him standing like that when we took the picture. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank, or someone had photoshopped it. I brushed it off as a weird coincidence and went back to sleep. But the texts didn't stop. The next one came an hour later. It was another picture, but this time, the clown was no longer at the carnival. He was standing across the street from my apartment. I felt a cold wave of fear wash over me as I looked out the window, half expecting to see him standing there. Nothing. I texted back, "Who is this?" But no response came. I stared at my phone for what felt like forever, my mind racing with possibilities. Was it someone from the carnival? One of my friends messing with me? Or was it something worse? Another picture buzzed through, and this one sent me into a full-blown panic. The clown was now standing outside my apartment building, closer than before, his face still frozen in that grotesque grin. My hands started shaking. I called Jenny and Rachel, but neither of them had any idea what I was talking about. By this point, I was terrified. I locked all the doors and windows, double-checking every lock. I called the police, explaining that someone was sending me threatening photos. They said they'd send someone to check on me, but there was little they could do without a clear threat. Then came the final text. It was a picture of the inside of my apartment. The clown was standing in the hallway just outside my bedroom door. I screamed, dropping my phone. I could hear faint footsteps from the hallway, growing louder, closer. I grabbed a lamp from my nightstand and stood by the door, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. The door creaked open slightly, and I could see the white paint of the clown's face through the crack. I didn't wait for him to come in. I swung the lamp as hard as I could, hearing it smash against something. There was a grunt, and I ran for the front door, not stopping to see if he was still following me. I bolted out of the apartment and straight into the arms of the police who had just arrived. They rushed in, but by the time they got inside, the clown was gone. All they found was a broken lamp and the remnants of smeared clown makeup on the floor. The police later told me that the clown was likely the same man responsible for several stalking and assault cases in the area. He was never caught. No fingerprints, no trace, just a lingering sense of terror. I couldn't go back to that apartment. Every creak, every shadow made me think he was still watching, waiting. Now, every time I see a clown, Even in passing, my stomach turns. The memory of that night will never leave me. He could still be out there, watching, waiting for his next victim. My name is Mark Edwards. I'm 34 years old, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside of Denver, Colorado. I'm a father of two, and life has always been pretty predictable. That was until my daughter Lily's 6th birthday. What was supposed to be a joyful celebration quickly turned into a nightmare, one I can't seem to shake off. We had planned a simple party for Lily, inviting some of her school friends over for cake, games, and a clown performance. I found the clown, Mr. Giggles, through an online ad. His reviews seemed solid, and his rates were affordable, so I booked him without a second thought. The party started as expected. Mr. Giggles arrived in full clown makeup, bright red nose, rainbow wig, and a huge, exaggerated smile painted across his face. The kids were ecstatic, laughing and cheering as he twisted balloons into animals and performed silly magic tricks. I was pleased with how everything was going, but then I started noticing things that didn't quite sit right with me. The clown seemed too interested in the kids, especially when they weren't watching him perform. He wandered off during the games, standing too close to the children, whispering things I couldn't hear. Every time I looked his way, he was already watching me, his smile still plastered on his face, but somehow wrong. I chalked it up to paranoia. Maybe I was just being overprotective. After all, clowns are supposed to be weird, right? After the cake was served and the presents opened, I expected Mr. Giggles to pack up and leave. But he didn't. He stayed longer than necessary, lingering around as the parents began taking their children home. I even made small talk with him, asking if he needed help cleaning up, but he simply shook his head, his eyes darting back to the children playing in the backyard. Eventually, the party wound down, and Mr. Giggles left, or so I thought. I didn't see him walk out the front door, but I assumed he had slipped out quietly. The kids were exhausted, and my wife, Sarah, and I began cleaning up. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I went downstairs to lock up the house. That's when I saw him. Mr. Giggles was still there, standing just outside the sliding glass door, staring into the living room. My heart raced. I rushed to the door and swung it open. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. The clown didn't respond at first. His face twitched under the makeup, and for a moment, his smile seemed to falter. Then, in a low voice, he muttered, "Just making sure the kids had fun." "Get out of here," I snapped, stepping toward him. "I'm calling the police." His smile disappeared completely, and his whole demeanor changed. His eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer, the smell of cheap grease paint filling the air. "You shouldn't have hired me," he whispered, his voice chilling. "You have no idea who I am." I slammed the door shut and immediately called the police. By the time they arrived, Mr. Giggles was gone. They did a quick search of the area, but found no sign of him. The officer told me he was probably just a disturbed man, and not to worry. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The next morning, I turned on the news, hoping to distract myself from the events of the previous night. But instead, the headlines sent a wave of dread through me. A child from our neighborhood had gone missing. My stomach twisted into knots as the reporter went on to explain that the authorities were looking for a man dressed as a clown, believed to be involved in the child's disappearance. My heart sank. Could it have been Mr. Giggles? Panic surged through me, and I rushed to search every inch of my house, starting with the basement. It's a dark, cold space we rarely use, mostly for storage. As I moved boxes aside, something caught my eye. An old door I had never noticed before, partially hidden behind a stack of crates. My hands trembled as I opened the door. Inside was a small, cramped compartment. And there, huddled in the corner, was the missing child, pale, shivering, but alive. I don't remember how long I stood there in shock. The next few hours were a blur of police officers, flashing lights, and questions I couldn't fully answer. All I knew was that the clown I had hired for my daughter's birthday had been using the party as a cover for something far more sinister. The news confirmed my worst fears later that day. Mr. Giggles, whose real name was Marcus Flanders, was wanted for multiple counts of kidnapping and murder. He had been hiding in plain sight, using his clown persona to get close to children. I can't shake the guilt of what happened. If I hadn't hired him, if I had trusted my instincts sooner, maybe none of this would have happened. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see his twisted smile staring back at me. My name is Maggie Thompson. I'm 30 years old, and I live in a small town just outside of Portland, Oregon. Life hasn't been easy since my husband passed away last year. I've been raising our daughter, Emma, on my own, and the nights have been the hardest. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened one evening, a night that still haunts me. It was a quiet evening. Emma was staying at my mom's for the weekend, and I was finally getting a chance to relax. I had just settled down with a cup of tea and a movie when the doorbell rang. It was strange because I wasn't expecting anyone. Glancing at the clock, I saw it was already 9 p.m. I approached the door cautiously and peeked through the peephole. My heart skipped a beat. Standing on my porch was a clown. He was dressed in bright colors, holding a bouquet of balloons, his painted face smiling, but it wasn't a happy smile. Something about it felt wrong. At first, I thought it had to be some sort of mix-up, a prank, or maybe a delivery gone wrong. I cracked the door open slightly, just enough to speak to him. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice trembling despite trying to sound calm. The clown didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at me with those cold, unblinking eyes. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Your husband hired me before he died." I froze. My heart raced as his words sank in. My husband, Chris, had been dead for over a year. He was killed in a robbery gone wrong, a night that shattered my world. But why would this man, this clown, claim Chris had hired him? Before I could process what was happening, the clown shoved his foot into the gap, forcing the door open wider. I tried to slam it shut, but he was stronger. He pushed his way inside, the balloons brushing past me as he stepped in. Panic surged through me. I backed up, my mind racing for a way out. "Get out," I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. "I'll call the police." The clown's smile never wavered. He leaned in closer, his breath hot and foul against my face. "You see, Maggie," he whispered, "I wasn't just hired. I was there that night. I helped him die." My stomach turned. I'd remembered every detail of that night. The police report, the blurry surveillance footage of Chris being attacked. Was this man, the one standing in front of me, part of it? Had he been involved in killing my husband? I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. I just acted. I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy candle holder from the coffee table, and swung it at his head. It hit with a sickening thud, and the clown staggered back, clutching his face. I didn't wait. I ran to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the phone, dialing 911. "Please," I gasped into the phone, "someone's in my house. He's trying to." My words were cut short by the sound of footsteps behind me. The clown was still standing, blood trickling down his face from where I had hit him. He smiled again, but this time it was twisted with pain and fury. "I wasn't finished," he growled. I backed up toward the back door, ready to run, but the sirens were already wailing in the distance. He heard them too. Without a word, the clown turned and bolted out the front door, disappearing into the night. When the police arrived, they searched the area but found nothing. All they had were my shaken words and the bloody footprints he left behind. They told me he was likely gone for good, but that didn't bring me any comfort. Every night since, I've wondered if he's out there, waiting for another chance. I still lock every door, check every window, and keep a weapon close by. But the truth is, no amount of security can erase the image of that clown, the man who took everything from me, and the terror that he might come back to finish what he started.